good afternoon and Ayubuan, and welcome to today's session. Today is actually a masterclass on what we can do as trainers, teachers, facilitators, and even coaches for that matter, because it's all about creating the space for the learner to have that experience of getting inspired and moving from not just thinking but into action. Because while our trainings are definitely good because we put our passion, our love into the content and designing, and of course, each of us strive to make the program the best for our audiences. We also need to be mindful that while intentions are good, is it really becoming what we really want it to be in terms of action, especially in a corporate world where the investment is so high on training programs? What happens when you do trainings and there's no action taken or no behavioral change? So, the whole idea of bringing this to you is to help you understand that wherever you are, you can make that better. You can make that inspiring. You can make that interesting. And you can appeal to all types of audience in the room. And for this, Radical Edge Learning Consultants, that's the company that we founded almost 10 years back. This June, we'll be completing a decade. And I'm grateful for all the clients and associates who've been with us for such a long time. And this time, we are partnering with two fantastic human beings. One, Deepthi and Arvind. And I'm, of course, going to allow them to introduce themselves to you. And I thought, in fact, I met Deepthi in Bali last year when we both were there for a conference. And we struck a chord and we said, all right, let's do something which is very interesting. And I got to know more about Deepthi, what she does, and how she really makes this every experience so long lasting in terms of learning, which retains for a longer time. So that's how the whole ideas and the conversation landed up. So let's get going. And I'm sure you all are curious to know what's in store today. So I'm going to invite Deepthi to take over from me here and then lead on.
All right, sure. Thank you, Vanita. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everybody. So Arvind and I are here. We have a little bit about what we do. I have been in this space for more than 10 years doing game-based facilitation. And like Vanita said, we have met at a conference. We had some conversations going, and we wanted to see what best we can bring together. And that's how Arvind and I met as well. So conferences are honestly a great place to start collabs. And Arvind is a game-based designer, and I'm a game-based facilitator, and we have designed and facilitated things for various audiences. We have done a couple of train the trainer programs in India, where we wanted to talk more about facilitation processes, to how you can use AI, how you can use games to create the stickiness and the retention. I have worked across industries. That's a little bit about me. I will let Arvind speak about himself and then probably go into the session. Arvind?
Thank you. Good afternoon, folks. Unlike Vanita or Deepthi, I am perhaps the black sheep in this entire cohort. I am an outsider to the facilitation space. Unlike others, I've been here for a very, very short time, only for like about 8 years or so, right? And majority of my life I have dedicated to playing games, learning games, and making games as well. I have been making a ton of serious games. In fact, under my own studio, I have 8 published serious games as well. And today we will be, sampling one of them later on when we play this game that I have for all of us. Beyond this, I've been running a whole host of game-focused, game-based learning experiences. I have helped people from Google and Amazon and a bunch of other famous companies from India, Singapore, the US, Australia, all over the world, right? My heart and soul lies in games, and I live and breathe this stuff. Apart from this, I also run a bunch of online courses as well. One is about how do you become a game master for games like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. I also run a very popular convention in India. It's called TTRPG Con, which is all about tabletop role-playing games. And of course, I am super duper excited to be here because I am not going to be your very polished, let's No, it's going to be a very different experience because it's all about the energy and the vibe for me. And I'm really, really, really passionate about games. And I hope that, a little bit of that is going to rub off onto you and I can excite you. So thank you for this opportunity, Vanita, and everybody else here who's graciously agreed to donate 90 minutes of their lives. Arigato gozaimasu. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Arvind. Thank you.
All right. So with that being said, Vanita, do
Oh,
you?
okay. I guess most of them know me in the room, so I don't need another introduction.
Okay.
But if you're wondering what am I doing with two gamers, I think the base of creation or innovation or creativity, everything starts with emotional intelligence, the self-awareness, and that's the space I am in. I actually work with a lot of people around the world in more than 15 countries. And my base, of course, is in Bangalore, India, but Colombo is my second home. You would find me more often there in a year as well. And I am the distributor and also the master facilitator for Genos, which is an Australian-based company for emotional intelligence. And I'm also a mindfulness-based instructor. So the whole idea of getting game-based is I do understand how the neuroscience works when there is a game-based activity. And I'm super excited to have these wonderful two people in the room today to help you understand how you can make impactful, whatever you're doing, whether you're working in corporate, you're on your own, you're a teacher or you're a trainer or you're a coach, facilitator, irrespective of the various avatars that you're on, there's something for each of us to take back today. And trust me, it's deeply rooted in brain science. So I'm going to allow the experts to do the talking while I'm going to be listening as a participant today. And I'm so excited. Thanks once again, Deepthi and Arvind. Let's get going.
Thank you. Thank you, Vanita. So that's a little bit about all of us in the room who are going to be speaking to you today. In the next 80 minutes or so, we are going to look at these four things, how experiential and ordinary facilitation, if we have to compare them, what really happens in each one of them, and where ordinary facilitation falls short, how game-based learning really fixes the gap, and how game-based learning really works and what your learning journey can look like what you will have some takeaways from today, but we do have a little more in store if this piques your interest. Yes. Okay, so first we will get started with talking about the gap. Honestly, I have been doing this for 10, 12 years in terms of going from being a trainer to a facilitator, understanding the difference between training, facilitating, honing my craft slowly, steadily. But more often than not, when I walk into classrooms, I usually find that people want to look good. Yeah, they want to seem smart, intelligent in front of their peers. They want to sound politically correct. Sometimes, more often than not, they have been nominated by somebody else to be in the room. So there is some resistance. I can see some of you smiling in the audience. So I know that this is a very, very relatable reality that we walk into these kind of rooms. And then, as facilitators, we have the tall order of wanting to get these audience to lean in and take away what is on our agenda in terms of what we want to talk about in terms of learning. So the biggest gap in this is the way audiences react, right? When they are giving us things that we want to listen, they are participating, yes, but they're not taking risks. They sound safe. They are predictable answers. They're acceptable answers. It's almost performative. They are just saying and doing things that we want them to. And that too, if we are lucky. And otherwise, sometimes we are also met with audiences who are very, very silent, who don't want to participate as well. That is also another reality. So when this tends to happen, all the things that we want to do gets tick boxed, right? There is a program, the audience is there, we've asked the right questions, sometimes we've gotten the right answers. And then after a while, when you're looking at the delta shift, you're looking at a real change, you're looking at aha moments, and they haven't happened. And then you feel like something's missing, and I don't know how to fix that. And what Arvind and I truly believe is that games really change that equation for us. One of the things is the minute you bring games into the room, these facades and layers slowly start peeling off because people are in it and their inner child is in the game. They want to win, they want to enjoy. There is laughter, there is banter. And then you see people reacting how they normally would. Their real true selves start coming through. And that shared experience, as versus a hypothetical conversation, gives us a reality that we can root their experience and learning from. And when we tend to do the debriefs, and of course, the debrief is a huge chunk of this entire experience where we talk about what we noticed, what we saw them doing, how we see them reacting, were there consensus, was there conflict, and all of these things give us enough and more information in terms of how people behave. And that's when light bulbs start going off, right? So that is where we are trying to flip the script with game-based learning. Arvind, would you like to add something here? You're on mute.
Yeah. So I do like the way that you have, presented this and how you've spoken about the gap. And in a bit, when we talk a little bit more about the structure of games and the magic circle, I will expand on that. But Deepthi, I was wondering if you could talk about our very precious Kirkpatrick model as well.
Yes. 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 So, one of the things as facilitators as well, we tend to be asked to deliver at a certain level using the Kirkpatrick model. And usually, in the first two levels of reaction and learning, at least where learning is a memory-based thing, where people are able to remember and possibly recollect what the concepts were, we are still able to sort of hit the mark. But when games come into play and behaviors change, is because we see the original, their true selves in terms of behaving in that moment, right? And that's where we can hope for creating tangible outcomes and drive those learning journeys much deeper. Also, because it's a shared, lived experience in the classroom.
Bingo. Thank you for that. I am going to request that I can share because I've just tweaked some slides in runtime based on something that you had.
Okay.
Yeah. So
You can.
brilliant.
Okay.
I am sharing. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you for that, Deepthi. And so we spoke about how there is a gap in the way that we approach facilitation and how we would actually like, like a delta to be there when we are trying to deliver the kind of results we want for our participants. And that's where game-based learning totally kicks in. Because when it comes to games, there is a very simple mental model that we can use for the structure of a game, right? We might have played games like chess, we might have played games like Ludo, Monopoly. Some of us might have played more games like, say, perhaps a video game, perhaps, or we might have been playing other board games like Catan and Wingspan, or any host of the many, many things that you can see behind me. Games come in all shapes and sizes, but if we were to distill them down to the key parts, we would get what you see on screen. What you see on screen is a very simple diagram that explains what a game is all about, right? This is not my diagram. It is from a company called Riot Games, and they have a fantastic free course in which they teach how do you make amazing video games. Now, Riot Games makes some of my favorite video games, and I'm paying homage to them. But this picture that we see is absolutely amazing because what it does is it talks about the key parts. And I just want to clarify, can you all see my laser pointer move?
Yes,
Brilliant,
sir.
brilliant, super. So the first thing I want to highlight is there are a lot of things over here, but I want to highlight this box, right? This dotted line box. That is what we would call the game. Okay. Now, I want you to remember that because there are many things that happen in a game, and I'm going to be explaining this to you at a very high level. And in the future, we will dive down deeper into that. So, first, when someone's playing a game, a player is going to have a starting point. Okay. And what they want to do is they want to achieve some sort of a goal. All right. Now, it's not easy because there is a lot of opposition in the goal. There are a lot of obstacles. So what the players have to do is they have to make decisions. More importantly, they have to make meaningful decisions to go from the start to the goal. I'll give you an example of golf, right? What is golf? In golf, we're taking a small ball, which is very, very hard, and it has a bad case of acne, and we're trying to put it in a hole far, far away, right? Now, the easiest way to do that would be to just pick it up and then go drop it in the hole, right? That's it. That's how you score. But that's not the game, is it? In the game, we are voluntarily accepting opposition. right? We're going to say, nope, you have to hit it with a stick that's like 6 feet long, and you have to make sure you swing your hips, and the sticks are going to be very expensive, and they come in fancy leather bags, and there will be amazing movies from Hollywood made about it. We accept all of those, right? That is what a game is. A game is when we are voluntarily accepting these sort of oppositions. And the reason we do that is because these decisions then we get to make within the context of this dotted line, right? This game, they're valid. They are meaningful. Do I use a 4 iron or a 9 iron? I have no idea what that means. I just, read it up on Wikipedia so that I can sound knowledgeable. But those decisions, for those who know, make a lot of sense, right? Same thing. Let's say if you're playing chess. I'm amazing at chess. I have a ELO of 800, which means my 8-year-old daughter can kick my bum. But what does that mean is that, oh, am I going to be using the Karo Khan defense, or am I going to be trying the fried liver attack, right? I'm watching YouTube videos so that I can make more meaningful decisions within the context of the game, right? Now, as facilitators, as game-based learning experience designers, what we need to understand is that our power comes in designing this opposition and designing the meaningful decisions that people can make, right? Because what happens when someone's playing a game is this is the heart, right? This is the core loop. They want to go from the start to the finish, and they have to make those decisions. And they do that by, considering what is the opposition that's there. And when we are designing what goes inside the box, we get to influence the kind of decisions they make. And when we get to influence the kind of decisions people make, we can design an experience where certain behaviors will emerge. Okay. I'm not going to get into too much of technical stuff, but the way we, define how somebody can play the game is with the rules, right? So the rules provide the interface for the player to interact with the state of this system, right? So if you're doing system design, the rules tell us how somebody can interact and change the state of that system, how they can make the decisions, how can they handle this opposition, how can they make meaningful progress towards that goal. Okay. Now, if you have that, that's great. Because every time a player is interacting with the rules, right, we get an interaction and an experience that somebody is living through, right? Now, as you can see, I've spoken about everything except the theme, because even if you didn't have a theme, right, if you had a purely abstract game, for example, chess, we might say it's about war, but you can remove the theme as well, and it doesn't really matter. Or let's say we have a game like tic-tac-toe, right? That is also a very simple game and doesn't have any necessary theme, but still there are things that we can, derive from the interactions that happen. As facilitators, what we want to be clear about is what are these interactions that are happening? What is the stuff that we can engineer via the rules, and what are the decisions, meaningful decisions we can present to the players, and how do these decisions lead to specific learning outcomes, right? So when we actually go into game design, we're going to be looking at, oh, okay, this is the big outcome I want, and we're going to be working backwards from that. Okay. Now this particular flow, this particular diagram you see is a very high level abstraction of a game, right? There are other things such as mechanics, we have the dynamics, we have the aesthetics, we have the emergent behavior, we have sources, we have sinks. These are all a lot of technical terms that we don't have to worry about. At a very high level, we're going to be designing that experience so that somebody goes from the start to the finish by making meaningful decisions. And the way they can do that is by abiding to the rules. Now, you see this theme, right? It's been set apart for two specific reasons. One is for us to understand that the theme is not necessarily always necessary, right? Sometimes it can be something that is just bolted on. On other times, it can be very well integrated into the whole game itself, right? For example, let's say if we are making a game about trading in a market, right? Let's say that there is a farmer's market that happens on every Sunday, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what is there, and how can you buy? The price of items are going to go up and down. In those cases, the theme can drastically affect the kind of decisions that are presented to the player. And if we have a theme, people can rely on their inherent knowledge of a system. Like, I know what a market looks like, I know how a market functions. We can take that knowledge and we can influence the kind of decisions that we want people to take. But at the same time, we can use the theme for a very, very important purpose, right? And that is called escaping reality. Okay, this is where I'm going to start sounding like a crazy person, but trust me, I'm not. My psychiatrist has confirmed that. Okay. I have done the DSM-5 and they said, I just have ADHD. I do not have anything else. Now, the theme is a wonderful tool of escape day in, day out, right? We are living in a reality that we have constructed for ourselves, right? It could be good, it could be bad, but it is our own. And quite often, there are a lot of external pressures that keep on coming in, right? And we have to interact, we have to go with these pressures and we have to deal with them. However, in a game, when we are providing a theme, we can also provide an escape. And if that escape is powerful enough, it allows us to hijack a very, very core principle in psychology, which is called dissociation, and a second principle, which is called bleed. I'm not going to talk much about dissociation, but I will talk about bleed, all right? Because the core idea here is that we can get people to escape reality and enter this magic circle. Magic circle is a very powerful concept when it comes to game design. In this game, in any game, when someone enters the magic circle, it means that they are leaving real reality behind and they're stepping into this magic circle and they're accepting the current reality. This is important because what it means is that they are forming a sort of a contract with us to say that, hey, you know, this box, I'm stepping into this box, right? This box becomes that magic circle. And by doing so, I am agreeing to stick to the rules, right? It means I will not pick up that golf ball and go drop it in the hole. No, it means that I will try to hit it with a metal club and push it far, far away. That is what they're agreeing. And when they're doing this, everything else that is there outside of this dotted line stops mattering. Right, there have been a ton of studies that have been done from a whole bunch of researchers, and a lot of it has been compiled in this book by Jesse Shell called Game Design, The Art of Game Design, a book of lenses, right? And it is the de facto recommended book. And if not, there's this other big fat book called Game Design Workshop by Tracy Fullerton, and they've also spoken at great lengths about this book. And another book is um, Perry's book, Handbook of Game Design, right? That is another, it's a big fat tome, costs about 32,000 rupees here in India. And it's actually downstairs. I don't have it with me right now. There too, they have outlined a ton of research that points that when somebody enters this magic circle, right, they start to inhabit the avatar, the role that they have taken for themselves within the context of the game. This is very, very useful because now when they have left that old version of them behind, when they have left that real version of them behind. Only their consciousness now exists within this magic circle. Everything that they experience when they are making these decisions, when they are facing this opposition, is going straight to them, right? They're leaving behind all the performative leadership that Deepthi had mentioned, right? Because now it's not about, oh, this is going to be on the test. This is how I should respond or behave in this role play. It's no longer that because now they're focused on getting to that goal. They're focused on making these decisions. And as facilitators who are outside this box, we can see that, you did this. I noticed this interaction about you. I'm going to be taking that and using that for a debrief, which we will be covering in a later part. Now, why is this important is that other concept I mentioned about 3 minutes ago. It is called bleed. All right. It's a very, very well documented effect that whenever we consume any piece of media, whether it is text, whether it is audio, video, whatever we consume shapes our worldview in a certain way. It makes us look at the world in a slightly different way. But in a game, it takes it one step further. The reason for that is we're so immersed in this game. The key is immersion, right? When we're so immersed, there is a lot of like concentration of those ideas that gets fed into us. And when we come out of the magic circle, that bleed effect still stays. The way we behave in the game is very close to how we will behave even afterwards, right? It might linger for a longer time as well. Also, when we're in that magic circle, our behavior is completely true, right? And that leads us to, hey, if we have such a powerful experience where we can get people to leave behind their facades, where we can get people to leave behind their performances and actually behave in a true way, how can we actually, capitalize on that? And that's how I want to talk about how game-based learning works. But before I jump ahead, I am curious, does anybody have any questions so far? Anything that I can clarify? I'm going to sound like a Luddite, but I cannot see the chat window. So in case there is something,
There is
please let
no
me know.
questions, Arvind, but I have a question
Please.
because we spoke about the magic circle that looks
Mhm.
like a black hole or glows like a little purple.
Mhm.
Plus, the Kirkpatrick model, which I'm sure
Correct.
every HR person in an organization or a consultant knows it, but
Mhm.
that is the basic. So
Mhm.
how do you connect these two? Because I couldn't get that connect.
I thank you. That is perfect because that is the perfect setup for me to explain how we can connect those two, right? That's how game-based circle works. To summarize, when people are playing a game, they're voluntarily entering the magic circle. They are leaving behind any pretenses and they're being their true selves when they're playing a game where they're fully immersed. Now, that is the first part, right? So that is where they are undergoing an experience. Now, how do we connect that to learning outcomes is what I'm going to cover in this step, okay? So we spoke about a game, but now let's talk about how the learning bit happens as well. Yes, Vanita, you had anything to add?
All good.
Oh, cool. All right. I call it the EPA loop, EPPA. You might see that, as I'm explaining this, there is a similarity to Kolb's experiential learning as well. So please keep that in mind as a grounding, right? So first thing we want to talk about EPA is that EPA is a way for us to learn from games, right? And it is a flow that we want to have. First thing is an experience. All participants will undergo an experience. There will be some context setting, some rule teaching, and all of that. And then people will undergo that experience. Basically, they are playing the game. Then after they finish playing the game, we go to the first P, which is patterns, right? We unearth and we label various patterns that we have seen during gameplay, right? So how this looks like as a facilitator, when your participants are playing a game, you're walking around the room, you are observing. And later, Deepthi will be talking in greater detail about the whole debriefing, and I'm sure she's got a little dance for us as well. So first, participants undergo an experience, which is the gameplay. Then, in conversation during the debrief, we raise certain patterns that have emerged during this gameplay. This comes from us labeling the various interactions as facilitators that we have observed. Once we do that, then we see what are the different principles that we can derive from these various patterns that we have observed. It's very important because here it is generic. From there, we're distilling it into something specific. And then we really drive the point home with application, right? How can you apply these principles into everyday work, right? So EPA becomes experience something, we extract and label the patterns. From there, we distill it into principles, and then we figure out how we apply. So when someone goes through this process, they played the game, and then we have a debrief about what all behavior that emerged, what were the mechanics, what were the different interactions. We're able to unearth various points for conversation based on those experiences as well. I'm going to be giving you an example, all right, where we're going to be playing a game that I have designed called Sticky Fingers. Okay. Now, this is a game that is designed to be played in person. The whole game's going to be taking an hour, but I assure you, we will not be playing the whole game. All right. What we're going to be doing is I'm going to be giving you a very brief taste of how to play this game and how we could potentially debrief that as well. Okay. So for this part, I'm going to be sharing my screen because I've added these slides for actual cards right now. Game's called Sticky Fingers, and in this game, I'm good. Okay, before that, I just want to make sure that I can see everybody in the grid. Okay. All right. Now, what I've done is I have these actual cards, right, which are about like yay big. But since it's going to be quite challenging for us to see, I have scanned and I've put up a couple of cards on the screen as well for a very brief sort of an experience. In this game, all of us are a group of robbers. Okay, we are museum thieves, and we're working together to steal a diamond from a museum. Right? We receive a transmission. Hello, Team Foxtrot Delta. Your mission is to break into this museum and steal this diamond. Many have attempted to steal this before, but you know what? Money is money. If you make it, you shall have your reward. If you choose to accept, the helicopter will drop you on the roof of this museum. Fast forward, all of us are all of us are dropped onto the ceiling of this museum, okay? And what we see in the ceiling are two things. First is a big skylight. Okay, it's like a sky dome, and it's about 20 feet across. All right, and it is got like a hinge over here, and it's something that opens up like that. That's one thing that we see. And the other thing that we see is that there is like some sort of scaffolding, right? Some sort of construction work. There's like the big bamboo sticks, and there's like rope, and like there's this dustbin and all of that. Now, as players, you will have to tell me what you're trying to do. Your main options are one, to go investigate something, or two, to use something. That's it. It's as simple as that. Your end goal is to collect and steal a museum, which is somewhere in the museum's wall. Okay. So now, as a facilitator, I have dropped cards number 1, if you can see my camera, and 4 at the table. Okay. These are like A7 sized cards. So please unmute yourselves and tell me, what is it that you would like to do?
But to clarify first, you are
Yes.
asking, we are analyzing what is this, or we are directly jumping into figuring out the way?
Directly jumping in to figure out the way. You
Okay.
are playing the
Okay.
game, Bhumika. So,
Okay.
Bhumika, since you spoke first, you have the good fortune of trying to do something. What would you attempt? What would you like to try?
Would I jump in?
So you have two options, okay? One is to investigate, or two is to use something. Right now, you have no information, so you would want to perhaps investigate.
Yeah, and I would actually investigate the bamboos first.
Perfect. When you
Yeah.
go and investigate the bamboo, all right, you notice that there are a few things over there, okay? First, you find a toolbox, which I'm showing in the camera, okay? And you find a big bin of waste, okay? What would you like to do? Somebody else now. You can go back and look at the stuff that is there on the screen, or you can choose to investigate it further.
I'll investigate the waste basket.
Fantastic. As you dig through, nothing actually seems to, it's mostly construction rubble. But the one thing that does stand out is what looks like an application form. Okay? It has this information. Now, in the actual game, I would be placing these cards at your table. Let's say that somebody else chose to investigate the dome, right? You're trying to figure out a way to open it. And what you see as what's popped up on the screen share is a number entering keypad sort of a thing. And there is these 3 cards that you have on the table. When you investigate further near the scaffolding, like what Bhumika had done, we find these things. So now there are going to be more and more cards placed. When you investigate the numpad, you find this post-it that says, I've set my birthday as the temp code for the skylight. It says DDMMYY. Okay? So if you combine this information along with this form that you found, right? It seems that you have one piece of information. You seem to have the year of someone's birth, right? Because it says year of birth in this thing, right? As 89. Now, we're still lacking the day and the month. So, what would you all like to do next? What would you like to search for?
Check the toolbox.
Fantastic. As you dive into the toolbox, you find that there are a couple of things over there as well, right? You find, it's a big toolbox. It's red, it's rusty, and you find a variety of things, okay? First off is a piece of metallic wire, okay? This you will keep with you. And then you find an ID card, right? It says name is Shanks, date of birth is 15 July, and role is Access Tech. You find some rope as well as another post-it which says laser kill code. That curator, she set the code as her name. What? Okay, so now you see, you have received some assets. And now do you have the code for this?
Yes.
What do you think is the code?
15 July
15 July.
89.
Yeah.
But look at that. It says DDMMYY. So it'll be 150789.
0789.
So
Yeah.
then you see that the
Open.
skylight opens up. However, there is a new challenge. You're almost 40 feet from the top of from the ceiling all the way to the ground. How are you going to get down?
Use the bamboo.
Bamboo's pretty, it's strong and it's rigid, but it's tied up very, it's tied up very well. It doesn't seem to be able to be removed. Would you have some other thing that you might have?
We have the ropes.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Meghna. We do indeed have the rope. So as a facilitator, right? So now I'm breaking out of character into the game and say, as you are exploring more and more of this, right? You are acquiring various items. You are trying to use some of them to make progress in the story, and you are proceeding. Now, in an online experience, it's quite challenging for me to do this sort of a game because well, about 8 of the cameras are off and I can't see their faces. And usually we would be running this game in groups of maybe 5, right? And as people are going around, I'll be facilitating. I have like a sheet full of clues that I'll be, using to explain to people, oh, okay, you're trying this is what happens, this doesn't happen. So then what happens is that I'm going to be walking around, right? So this is the experience. I am answering their attempts for whatever they're attempting. If it works, I'll give them a card saying that, oh, it works. Now let's go ahead and dive in. Let's say that Meghna's idea of using the rope worked. It did, right? So then you drop into the room, and the first thing you see is a big lion painting with the label that is, hanging short. And then you see these giant statues which are set up in a specific order. These statues are almost like 30 feet tall, and they're made of marble. Well, the third statue's hands are broken and are in a table in front of it. And then you see a door that says exhibit, and it's got a laser's caution sign. And you see another door that leads to the security office. And finally, you see another door that leads to the front office or the curator's office. So you see, right? So I would be presenting that, okay, this is how you're moving. I am the engine of the game, right? Where I'm helping them move forward. But while this is happening, I'm also observing, all right, so I saw Bhumika and Meghna and Vanita, participate. But what about Deepthi? Was she, being overrun? Are they all, working together? Or is it like, alpha gamer behaviors popping up or someone quarterbacking? So you see, as this experience is happening, I am observing, right? So this is the E part, right? And then after this game, when I start talking, I'll be like, hey, so I noticed that Deepthi was, maybe she had some ideas. The beginning, she was enthusiastic. Then I saw, the light drain from her eyes. What do I just saw that happened. Then from there, in conversation, we would extract patterns and apply them to work. So this is a very, very brief sample. I cannot remotely do justice for this in an online experience. But trust me, I have run this for companies like Target, where I had about 150 people in a room, and we had everyone from interns to their site leader. And I had 2 other facilitators help me run this. And it almost ended in fistifights, right? Because they're like, how dare you? We got this first. And there were like people shouting and screaming. And we had people running around as spies. And you know what was the coolest part? Nobody checked their phones. Like for a solid 60 minutes. Like the guy's getting a call from somewhere in like Japan or something. He's like cutting the baad mein like saying, we'll take care of this later. We will finish this thing first, right? So there you have it, right? There's a very, very thin slice of what it looks like to have a game-based experience. Now I'm going to invite Deepthi to take us forward.
Thank you, Arvind. I think that was everybody might have gotten a flavor. If you haven't done game-based facilitation or haven't been in rooms with game-based learning, I think this is a very good introduction into how that kind of looks like and feels like. And like Arvind said, we have run games for large groups, small groups. And honestly, once we have the sheet of rules, most of us can run the games very, very easily, right? But that is 30 or 40% of the experience, because what really comes after the game really matters. Because I have had clients who came and told me, hey, you know what? The games were really fun. When we asked our group, they remembered all the fun experiences they had. But when we asked them, what did you learn? They fell short. So sometimes when we talk to our clients, that's the biggest ask because people think sometimes that games are just fun and no serious learning happens. So this is where, as facilitators, you would be playing a very, very pivotal role in creating that bridge. Because here it is really about connecting those dots. And Arvind, do you want to do this and get them to feel the vibe? So we
Deepti,
just
we had
wanted
a
to have
deal. You had to do this as well. Please. Such heresy will not be tolerated.
So, yes, Arvind has many talents apart from designing games. One of them is to do many, many voices. He used to be a voice artist as well for a bit. So, yes, so we really wanted people to feel the vibe and to get them out of, like we were talking from the beginning of the conversation, to get them out of their own reality and what Arvind was saying in terms of getting into this magical circle and experiencing everything that we have and then connect the dots to learning. So I think this largely sort of loosely sits on the audit kind of a model. And like how Kolb's was an anchor point for that, audit can be an anchor point for this. But what we are really looking at while we are walking around as facilitators is to start capturing reactions, conversations, how things happened on the table. Even otherwise, we do have physical games where people move about. So as a facilitator here, the first step is for you to observe and just look at what is happening within a group. And you would do this with no judgment, just taking in how people are just behaving, right? And post that, we examine this as a system. We're not getting to the individuals yet, but to say, hey, this group managed to work like this, or this group managed to finish in so much time, or not finish, or struggle, or whatever the outcomes were. We just sort of examining how those interactions happened, who did what. Like Arvind was saying earlier, was I hanging back? Was Vanita excited to participate? Was somebody, not feeling heard? Or what happened in that entire system, right? Whenever you get a group of people together, there is going to be some amount of power dynamics. Look, so we are examining that as a system here. And honestly, when we do the debriefs for these kind of games, we don't name names. We just name the patterns. We just name the behaviors that you have noticed, and you will find people smiling and nodding or giggling because it is their reality. Till that point, they might have behaved in such a way. And that's when you then move it to personal reflection to say, shift this to say how people personally showed up in that particular environment, in that reality that we had created and shared together. So it's almost like going from this point to holding a mirror to say, how did I show up? Was I enthusiastic? Did I hang back? Did I take initiative? Was I excited? Did I dominate conversations? Was I patient? Did I build consensus? So these are the questions based on the outcome that you want. Like Arvind said, every game we can skew it. In fact, most of the games will have elements of communication, taking initiative, leadership qualities. Most of like 80% of what our clients usually ask us for. But there are some games that we have designed for particular outcomes. So based on what your learning outcome is, you will drive questions where they will look at themselves and do the reflection part. Like, what did I go through? Yes, I had fun and laughter, etc. But what did I really go through in that 1 hour or 1.5 hour, and what really came out of there? Yeah. And when we do that, then we shift it now to say, like Arvind was saying earlier, sometimes these have an effect where it shows us our true self. And this is possibly how you show up at work as well. So for us to connect those and draw parallels for those observations and draw parallels for the participants to say, if this is how you behaved in this particular game, in this particular scenario, in this challenge, is this how you are doing it at work? And does that work in your favor? Does that help you? Does that behavior work for you? And if not, then how can we retrofit it? I mean, I have done game-based sessions for serious topics and frameworks where we were asked, let's say, like a situational leadership model. Usually a situational leadership model is like, okay, I will show you this 2x2 grid. And as a leader, you have these 4 styles, and this is directive, this is supportive, etc., etc. But what we did was to put them in a game, and we kept changing leaders. We kept increasing difficulty levels, like introducing constraints, the obstacles part that he spoke about. And as the game, evolved, whether they finished or not, when the time came, we asked them these questions. As a leader, where did you see yourself? What kind of a leader do you think you were? And then retrofit the framework, because here now you're not really telling, you're not in the telling mode anymore, right? You're getting pieces of information from them, you're building on the wisdom of the group, and then you're showing them, hey, this is how it fits into this puzzle that we call a leadership model. So that's how we see game-based learning being extremely powerful, because we are not really in a telling mode ever. And every time we take the game, like the situational leadership model that I'm mentioning, I have run that particular game 80 times in an organization. And I can tell you honestly, hand to heart, that I never know how a group is going to react. And every time I go with the game to the group, the outcomes are very, very different. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they falter, sometimes they struggle, right? And sometimes arguments break out. All kinds of things happen. And so, as a game based facilitator, I think one of the most important things also is to be able to think on your feet and to quickly pivot what is happening in the room, pivot your questioning, your anchoring to what is happening in the room, and to be able to read a room really, really well. So that's how the debrief works. And sometimes when we design games, we also start with those learning objectives. Like Arvind and I are working on a project where we want to work with CEO, CXO level folks, and we want to bring a one-day learning experience where the understanding is that we give them a slight um, like a mirror or a peek into their own leadership style. So when the client already comes to us with saying, hey, this is what I want, then we kind of use that as the anchoring point, and then scaffold all the other experiences and what kind of decisions we want them to make, what kind of environments are we building to drive exactly what we want. Yeah. Arvind, you want to add anything here, or you can take this forward next?
I do want to add a couple of things to whatever Deepthi has just added, right? Especially about the design of serious games. There is a fundamental difference and a very, very important difference between serious games and, let's say, regular games that you would, buy and play for entertainment. In those games, replayability becomes a key factor. Fun becomes a key factor. However, in serious games, it is all in service of the learning objective. If the game does not deliver on that, it is waste. However, there are certain things that we can do without sacrificing on learning objectives to actually make things fun, right? And that is where things like having props that I had shown earlier, or having a specific theme, or designing for highs and lows, like a roller coaster type experience within the entire progression of the game that is there. Also, this game does not have to be balanced. That is also important because a serious game is designed to expose different people's behaviors, to present different scenarios where they're going to be interacting. In a game designed for fun, everything should be perfectly balanced, such that, even if I'm playing as player A or if I'm playing as player B, it should be the same experience. But we have a different liberty where we can design a game to expose the specific behaviors that we want within that magic circle.
Just to
That's all I
add to
had.
what Arvind, thanks, Arvind. Just to add to what he was saying, I have delivered games where we have just used cards and hand drawings. In fact, the pictures that he showed you from the sticky fingers were hand drawn by Arvind.
Yep.
And yeah, so I have run games just on post-its and markers and just drawn things and quickly made something happen, to having props, which are like you have costumes and things people can wear and things people can use and touch and feel. So, I mean, and the game experience will still be that, but this will get you like a wow factor, and people are really excited because of the tangibles. So, irrespective of the budget that you are working within, there are options, multiple ways in which you can design an experience for it to be more engaging than what is. Yeah, I just wanted to put that forward.
I concur. All right. Deepthi, I'm going to request you to continue sharing itself because it will be a little bit more seamless. Super. So, so far, we've looked at what is a serious game, how does a game actually work, how do we debrief a serious game, and like what are the merits of actually using serious games in game-based learning. Now, what I want to talk about is what could your future look like from this point forward, right? Before I proceed, are there any okay, way to go with the reveal. Thank you.
Sorry.
Are there any questions that I could answer to clarify any doubt at all, whether it comes to game-based learning, serious games, or anything at all?
Facilitating games as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So usually at this point, people ask questions like, isn't designing games a lot of hard work? For me, I'm going to say the answer is not necessarily, right? In fact, we could design a very simple game in about 10, 15 minutes. The real value of any sort of a serious game comes in as a part of the debrief, right? Which is a skill that most facilitators have. What serious games provide are a bunch of different hooks, right? For us to observe and bring to the table, hey, this is what happened. Games provide a way for us to display certain behaviors. Second, people often ask, is this stuff going to be expensive? Well, if you go onto the market and you have to buy a legit legal board game, here it costs about maybe 4,000 rupees on an average for a commercial, game made for fun. But those games are usually, they don't deliver on specific learning objectives, right? So we could play such a game and we could derive certain learning outcomes from that. But with our knowledge as facilitators, with our knowledge of the theory and the frameworks, we can quite easily map that learning outcomes into a game experience that actually comes in. And if you're wondering how to do that, it would be with the framework that you see on screen, right? I'm not going to go into too much of detail because this is the masterclass. This is something that we'll be covering in the detailed session as well of Gamecraft. Deepti, if you could please move forward to the next slide. I can show that we're also going to be looking at various levers we have for motivation. This is by my friend Yukai Chow. When he and we spoke, he was at Huawei, and I think he was heading their VR division. I love his book, Actionable Gamification, if you've seen it. Actionable Gamification is nice. I was a part of his Octalysis membership site as well, and I haven't done the certifications, but what I did notice is that this is a fantastic frame that we have for looking at how do we actually enable people to take actions, and we'll be looking at how can we leverage this as a part of our serious game design as well. And Deepti, if you could move forward, we'll also be diving into the sales page. Hold on. There was the other slide from the beginning, right, where we looked at what is it, what do we actually need to design a game, where we looked at the system, we looked at the rules and the interactions, we looked at the meaningful decisions that participants need to make, and the obstacles that we present. We will be using that to design our own games as well, so that, we can come together and from start to finish, we would have a concept. And from that concept, we can use the framework that you see on screen to design a game around it. We will use the put the player first framework that you saw earlier, as well as the Octalysis framework to design a game that is actually fun to play, as well as something that is going to be delivering on learning objectives. And then we'll be able to derive a proper set of debriefing questions. And we'll actually be able to playtest each of these games as well. Apart from that, I'll also be talking about, Deepti, if you could please put me back on camera, the various toys and knickknacks and things that we can do for immersion, like, from props that you can see. And if you can see behind me, there's a giant katana. I don't want to get up because I'm wearing shorts and I don't think the world is ready to see my legs yet. We can talk about stuff that we can buy off the shelf. As you can see, there are a whole host of other games as well. So we'll be demoing a bunch of these games and trying to unpack what we can do. If you can see over here, there is a magical scepter. Again, various props that we can use to enhance the experience, various technologies like 3D printing, plastic forming. How do you get this done anywhere, right? Whether like when it comes to printing itself, right? So when you have cards like this, what sort of form factor, what is the UX that works well? How do you get the art done? How do you do the design? How do you get something ready for production? Like, how do you wrap it up in a nice, pretty box such that, you can just like from the get-go start impressing everybody out there. Of course, it's not just going to be about that, because remember, these are serious games and not just games for fun. So we'll also be looking at things like, how do you debrief this? How do you design an experience such that those learning outcomes are going to be front and center? Now, this is something I'm going to be springing on Vanita and Deepthi. With your permission, I would like to, live make a very quick game, a very, very small sample of a game that we could build, just to give people a taste. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
I'm good with it, Vanita.
All right. I'll promise I'm not going to take too much of time. So um, I'm setting a 5-minute timer. Okay. All right. I'm going to be picking a topic like listening. Is that an okay topic? Yeah, I think that's still popular enough, and everybody talks about that, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Very much required in AI era now.
oh, brilliant! I do like that. I do like that. All right. So again, this is me brainstorming live with a timer running. Okay. So can somebody tell me about a framework or a mental model that we can apply to listening? Go on, anybody. As you can see, I'm clearly demonstrating my lack of expertise in specific concepts and frameworks. I do know about some of this because I have made games, but I'm inviting others to participate. I'm running out of time here, folks. Please help me.
Come on, there are many, many models for listening. Anyone? Bhumika, Prasanna, Tarika, Pri, Ilham, Niranjali, Rupesh. Anything that you can remember?
One which listening effectively. I don't remember what framework it was called. And the
How,
first part was listen to understand, not to respond.
Oh, that's
okay,
the
Yeah.
7 habit. That's not a
Yeah.
framework, it's a habit. Yeah. Okay.
Stephen Covey thingy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Tell you what, I do remember one such thing, right? Where there is somebody who's sending the message. Okay. Again, this is extremely paraphrased. I am not the subject matter expert here. That's why I have AI. But let's say somebody's sending a message that has to be encoded in a certain way, then it has to be transmitted, and then it has to be decoded, and then it has to be understood, right? This is a very common communication model. I'm sure it has a fancy name. I just don't know that. Now, let's take that as the foundation of our, let's say that's the main thing that we want to teach. All right. Now, when I'm looking at this, the first thing I'm saying, like, oh, there are so many different parts that are there. First, there is the sender, then there is the message, and then there is the encoding, and then there is the transmission, and then there is the decoding, then there is the receiver, and then there is the understanding, right? So what I'll do first is I'll take all of these and then I will then write them out on Post-its. Okay, so I'll have each of these. Then I would apply a technique like the lotus blossom technique or maybe the scamper technique. All right, so let's take the first thing which is here, which is the message. Okay, now let's say the message is I want a snake as a pet. Let's say that is, I'm just looking at snakes. So I want a snake as a pet. And so that's going to be the message, right? Now, what we're going to be doing in the game is we'll have to figure out how to encode this, right? Now, to make things really, really clear, the goal, right? So remember in that diagram, right? We had the start and then we had the goal. The goal is we'll have I as the sender will have to send the message to Deepthi, and now the goal is she has to receive it. But I have to make sure that whoever else is coming in, they don't understand the message. So I have to pass that message secretly. Now I'm going to say Vanita is going to try and intercept that message. Okay. So what I have to do is the goal is I have to get a message from me to Deepthi without Vanita knowing it is, but Vanita will have the piece of paper in which it is written. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to talk about encoding. Oh, encoding gives me ideas on cryptography. Like, oh, I can use a Caesar shift cipher, or I can use like a double blank cipher, whatever. I can encode that message in a certain way, right? So I, as Arvind, will write down a message saying I want a snake as a pet. Then maybe I'm applying a Caesar shift, like I'm like changing it in some way, right? So maybe I now it looks like J space KK blah something something something. It looks like a bunch of gibberish, right? So I have that. Then I have to give it to Vanita. Then Vanita will try and use a bunch of different things at her disposal to try and decode it. And maybe she'll have a time limit of about a minute, right? And if that doesn't work, then she has to give to Deepthi. Now, Deepthi and I are not allowed to communicate. She should know enough about me so that she can decode. Maybe we'll have like I don't know, maybe 5 minutes of planning time, prior to this exercise so that we'll set up like various codes. excuse me, such that, this sort of communication is there. Now, maybe halfway through the communication planning thing, Vanita is allowed to join. So there is some sort of leak that is there as well. Now, you see, already just with about 30 seconds to spare, we have a very, very bare bones idea. I'll have a message, I'll encrypt it in some way, but I'll have to give it to Vanita so that she can get it to Deepthi. But Vanita will also she'll try and crack that message, or maybe she'll change that message and all of that. Now, as a facilitator, if I'm running this as a game, I have already multiple, how do I say, hooks for debrief as well, right? So one is the message. Now, Deepthi knows me enough to know that I'm not, what is the word I'm looking for? Yeah, she gets it.
I could finish that sentence in many different ways, but
I
I'd
know,
love
but the mere fact that you know this, Deepthi, so I'm not the traditional run-of-the-mill ordinary type of, so she could assume that if snake pops up, yeah, that's probably Arvind, right? So she already knows the context in which the sender is operating in. Second is, how am I actually encoding this, right? If I am an artist, I'm probably going to, try and draw stuff. If I am, I'm loving cryptography and the secret ciphers, I'm probably going to be doing that. So again, the way I'm going to be doing encoding, right? My predilection towards that. I am a visual thinker, so I might probably want to draw some stuff and, maybe use steganography to hide things in that, right? And then transmission. So Vanita is there, but has she changed the message? Has she cracked it? We don't know, right? So some stuff could be lost in translation. Maybe I have to send it word by word. And if Vanita rearranges the post-its in some way, then maybe the meaning gets changed, right? And then when it comes to decoding, if you don't have the same decryption, cipher, right? Then the meaning is changed, right? And then you actually need to understand, what if you understood, like, let's say the original message was, I have a snake, and then you assume that I'm having a snake for lunch. Then, that context could be probable, so therefore it could get lost. You see, now this is a very simple thing that I've been building off in real time with you using a topic that we just came up with, right? But when we have learning objectives, we can actually figure out what they are, build backwards from them, and actually create a game that actually works. With that, I'm going to stop prattling on. Deepthi, Vanita, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Arvind, so much. I think we have been able to give you like a flavor of what is possible and how game-based learning works, how we can build games, how we can also debrief using these to create more stickiness and retention and engagement in the classrooms. That really was the objective for the 60-80 minutes that we had together. I think if we have any questions, we are happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will pass it on to Vanita, and then we can close with that.
So I think, yeah, we'll love people to think and come back with any questions. You can either put it in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask any questions related to where you come from. In the past, in fact, it'll be nice to know if you can just raise your hands with the emotion. Have you designed and delivered any fun game-based learning before? If anyone in the room, if you can just raise your hand using the chat bar in the reaction button, or you can unmute and tell us. Okay, Bhumika has done it. Okay, thanks, Bhumika. You have any questions with what we have learned today?
No, I just wanted to have, I just saw a overview of Octalysis, but I have had attended Octalysis session and it was really interesting to listening that again, and I'm looking forward to, revisit, because the game which I had designed, it was initiatives with IIT Bombay, but it was clearly computer science game, data structures, and we did gamification of data structures, but we had used there. So I was just wondering how you are going to use Octalysis. Questions in my mind right now. Yeah.
I would love to give a very brief answer to that, Bhumika. So since you have attended Octalysis, you know that gamification and game design are adjacent, but they're not the same. Gamification is a usage of game elements in a non-game context, whereas here we are designing an entire experience that is encapsulated to provide entry into the magic circle and to provide opportunities for us to debrief. Octalysis, though, when you talk about phase one, phase two, phase three, like the on-ramp, the scaffolding, all of that, these are all very, very powerful mental models that we can use for motivating people, right? So why does somebody like this, going back to the early example of the listening game that we made, right? In runtime. If I was to apply scarcity, right? So maybe I am given a scarcity of only 5 post-its, but my message is like 10 words long. Then how do I communicate that, right? So maybe that's some way I can apply. Or maybe there is a completion thing, right? So if Vanita has cracked 3, then she'll get certain points. But then if she cracks all 5, then she gets like a special reward. So each of those levers that we have, the 8 that is there in the Octalysis, as well as the ninth one that he spoke about. Ninth is going to be tough for us to integrate, but if we can figure out, right, how to leverage these different levers for us to get the kind of behaviors that we want in service of our learning outcomes, it is amazing. It's absolutely amazing that way.
That's awesome. Never thought of it that way. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. Yeah.
no worries.
All right. Any other questions? And I think I like the clarity you gave between game-based and gamification, because many a times it's either misused, introduced,
Yep.
and overused without thinking. So I think I like that. And I think we are here to talk about game-based
Yes.
solution for whatever we do. Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. Because many times I've also had in the past people come and say, oh, but I am not wired to, gamify. And I say, well, that's not gamification. We're not talking about gamification. We're actually going to work on a game-based solution. So bring any topic and we can look at doing it. So you don't have to be creative and innovative to create game. Have you come across any thoughts like this, Arvind, in your experience?
Yeah, people often have a lot of resistance saying, oh, I'm not a gamer. I've just played Ludo. I've just played chess. I'm like, that's okay. Look at that. I have so many games. I will be bringing, all of these, and we're going to be playing a host of them as well. And not just fun games, right? So, I mean, these are fun as well, but the 8 games that I have, right? So there's this game called Welcome to Zombiepuram, where, there's a zombie apocalypse in Bangalore, humanity is spread out, and we will have to figure out how to survive. But this becomes a game of information trading and deal making, and how much do you trust the other person? But actually tied to learning outcomes in the realms of power dynamics, influence, negotiation, right? Listening, deal structuring, all of that stuff comes into this game, right? And then Sticky Fingers is about collaboration. We have Bloom, in which you're taking care of a garden and you're trying to grow as many flowers as possible. But in the debrief, you realize that it is a key for something else. I can't reveal it now, so because I don't want to spoil the debrief. But you're like, oh my God, I did this, I did that, and it's no previous experience necessary. Even if you've never played a game in your life, it's okay. I will be there. I'll take you through from not ever having played a game to having a very rough prototype for you ready to execute.
Yeah.
Lovely. That sounds very interesting and promising.
And I'll just be very honest. Again, there's a reason why Deepthi and I are such a wonderful team, right? She balances all the crazy in me, right? I'm very, very passionate about the craft, but I'm a bit rough around the edges. I have no qualms in accepting that, right? I mean, Deepthi taught me about the Kirkpatrick model, for heaven's sake, right? I'm forever indebted to her at all 4 levels. But the point is, as the yin and the yang, right? Like we bring in not just the game design side, but the debriefing side of things as well, right? So you get everything in one go.
So thank you, Arvind. You're far too kind. You're a nice guy. I keep telling you that. So basically, Arvind and I have worked together where we have delivered programs for other facilitators and trainers of an organization where we help them figure out how they can create more engaging experiences for their learners. So that's where all of this has come from and has happened. And while Arvind's experience lies a lot in games, I am still a newbie in that space in terms of how many games I have created. Like I've gone through some and I have created some, but not as many as Arvind for sure. But a couple of games that I have delivered or created have also really, really worked well. Another thing I want to tell you is like the barter thing that, like the trading kind of a format that I have created doesn't necessarily need an outcome. I don't really need people to finish. I don't need people to come to a conclusion or win or lose something. I just need the interactions, because then that creates a lot of insights into how people have just negotiated, handled conflicts, built consensus, and so on and so forth. So while real games, like the games that you're playing for fun, need replayability, need an end goal and a success criteria almost always, when we design serious games, sometimes I do have games where I don't have a necessary outcome that I'm looking for, and it still delivers on that. And another game that I had worked on was on a multi-generational conversations, because it's been like a hot topic right now. And I have taken it to the IF, the International Association of Facilitators, at the Pune conference, and at the Bangalore level, we had delivered it, where the conversations were really, really interesting between Gen Z, Gen Y, and Gen X, and how we can create empathy from that. So we have, like Arvind said, it doesn't matter and we have worked only on behavioral competencies, right? Empathy is such a, like, you cannot really put it saying you be empathetic or you start trusting me. I mean, the least you will trust that person, the least if he comes up and tells you that. But how do you create environments to make people want to trust each other or build trust? That's the real craft, honestly. So
I think, yeah. No, go ahead.
and honestly, that those two pieces is where Arvind and I come in, and we work well together. We're really hopeful that we have sparked some thought and excitement and interest in you guys, and we do want to do the full-fledged, the program that we have in mind that Vanita will talk about. But
Yeah.
that's really just a snapshot, like a teaser for now. So yeah, Vanita, you can.
Thank you very much, Arvind and Deepti, for bringing in. I think I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and so many ideas pop in. Of course, last year, exactly this time, I had created a game. Of course, without much of you both experience, it just comes because you deeply empathize with what the client wants. So it's a large bank in the Middle East, in Dubai, and they had a huge issue with customer centricity, right? So customer service is fine, but now it's no more the service, right? That's anyway expected. Now the point is, what do I do to really bring in customer experience? And to bring in that experience, it needs to be a customer centricity. So I remember as a kid, I used to love playing business. That was my go-to game. I don't know why I was crazy about it. And since I knew that this was a bank, and I replicated a branch, okay, on a table. So I think I have one of the models here, right here behind me. So I did actually that entire game all by myself. Of course, not getting into problem with the business company because they own the entire and they're patented. But I think the whole idea is, if you really understand what the outcomes a client wants, and if you want to make it very powerful to them, where every single participant of yours is involved and experience and even think, right? Like even serious games make you reflect.
Yes.
And that's much needed. We can't always be in a frenzy. You also need to take time to reflect, and that's where the debrief comes strongly.
Absolutely.
So that really took me to last year, my own journey with creating a game where
Right.
I think there were around 120 people involved in playing that games on the table with the cards and with the like all the dices and stuff like that. So I just replicated with a little change into what I wanted. So it's very doable. It's all it requires is your intention to really help your clients, whether you're working internally in corporate world or you are helping the corporate world as a consultant. I think it's fantastic. Now, for people in Sri Lanka, we are offering a train the trainer course where you get certified to create game based. And you've already seen Arvind and Deepti, what all they can bring onto the table. So it's going to be 3 days where day one would be about the psychology, about the game and all the other things. On day two, they would have more where you would also prototype a game. And on 24th, you will be given a topic. You need to create a game as a group, and then you. So Arvind and Deepti, if you want to add in more in what is happening in everything, that's going to be fantastic as well.
Like I had mentioned earlier, we will be following a very sort of a very, very simple process to make the games, right? Apologies.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're going to be looking at what is the core theory that we need, right? But that's going to be coming in the second half. the main focus on both the 22nd and the 23rd would be on playing various sort of games and understanding how they work, what actually makes them tick, and applying those principles into, like some sort of a library that you can draw from. So building up your own game design library, like what are the mechanics you like, what are the themes that you like. Then we'll also be looking at working backwards from the learning objectives and how do we structure the debrief and what are the key experiences that we need people to have such that we can deliver a valuable experience as a game-based learning experience. Then after that, we'll also look at the process of going from a concept or a learning outcome all the way to a finished game. We will not be able to finish the whole thing in the 3 days. I'll guarantee you won't have a polished game by then. But what you will have is a working prototype, right? That and a pathway for going ahead and making your own game a reality. Like I'll tell you, okay, here's how you get the stuff designed. Here's how you get the stuff printed. Here's what you should keep in mind. Here's how you do the play testing. Here's how you capture that feedback. Here's how you iterate on the whole process. Here is how you pick the various mechanics you need for the game. Here is how these kind of different mechanics will interact. Here's what each of these mechanics mean. Don't worry if that doesn't, the last bit about mechanics and dynamics, if it doesn't make sense, because you'll get that as you play various games. We'll play games like Love Letter. We'll play Nasi Lemak. We'll play a slightly longer game like Wingspan and Bloom and Zombiepuram and Sticky Fingers. And through each of these, right, we're not going to be playing them just for fun, though I do invite you to commence on this wonderful hobby. The idea would be with a lens of how can I use this information to build a serious game. So that's going to be the entire process. By the end of the 3 days, you will have a working prototype of your game concept, and you will know everything that you need to go from that working prototype to a finished version that you can run for your clients.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Arvind. And we really look forward to, you joining us in Colombo. And if you have any further question, we are here. Otherwise, you can always write into us. And if you have any further question about the whole TTT or anything else, reach out for that as well. Arvind and Deepti, thank you once again.